Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video I'm going to be going over Dr. Stevens, as I know a lot of people have acquired him in the last 24 to 48 hours, and I'm going to go over some mod ideas for him based on the teams he's going to be facing, and also how I use him, just some basic tips on how to use Dr. Stevens in raids. Now obviously Dr. Stevens maxed out as a character is extremely powerful. He has a very strong rush, it enables other characters. He is definitely a support character. He's not going to be able to do much by himself, but he makes other people basically rush a turn earlier 95% of the time. Combined with the fact that he can use his active turn 1 and be commanded turn 1, once he's done that, his active and his rush, he is pretty much done, but so is the enemy team a lot of the time, because he basically feeds so much AP to your damage dealers. They should be rushing potentially turn 1, definitely turn 2. Now this is my Doc Stevens, and he is one of the few 6 stars who I would recommend putting some veteran rings in. You can get him to 19 quite easily in terms of how much it costs, and it starts to cost things like military watches and hand crank radios. It's up to you past this point. The amount of stat increase that it gives you it's not mega, like you get about 250 to 300 health. It's not too bad, and same with defense. So it gives you a little bit of a boost, but it will be more expensive obviously. However, you will not use things like GPS and Canteen because he's a 6 star compared to S-class characters, so you could see it as a worthwhile investment. For now, I'm going to hold off. I could potentially increase it in the future though. Now when it comes to Dr. Stevens mods, there are multiple ways to mod this guy. There's defensive team Dr. Stevens, and then there's multiple different ways you have to mod him for attack teams, mainly because of these new leader skills that have come out. For instance, Angel, Mercer, and Jackie. For instance, against an Angel team, Daze Resist is a 100% must, so he can resist her leader skill. Obviously, against Mercer teams, it would be Stun Resist, so you could also resist his leader skill. And lastly, it would be Confuse Resist to resist the leader skill of Jackie, who is newly released. This isn't going to be as big a deal right now, but it will be in the future. However, for the majority of you, this is going to be your only Dr. Stevens. Some people may have 2, 3, or a lot more. If you obviously were involved in the Hell Tokens Gate and you did get tons of pulls on there, you could potentially have a multiple Dr. Stevens. You could gear them however you want based on the enemy you're facing. So I'm just going to run through the basics when it comes to the mods. You definitely want to use defense set or HP set because you want to increase the defensive stats of Dr. Stevens. Even though the set bonus isn't that big a deal, it will give him 650, 750 extra stat, and for a 6-star character that can be pretty nice, especially when it comes to HP, because if you want to use this guy on a defense team, you realistically want to get him over 5,000 HP if you can, which is extremely difficult to do as there aren't many leaders that actually boost the HP of Dr. Stevens. Angel leader, for instance, boosts the defense, nothing to do with HP, and obviously leaders like Pete do not affect Dr. Stevens at all. It would pretty much just be like Lao Po or Jackie herself in terms of boosting HP for Dr. Stevens. The reason you want a large amount of HP on Dr. Stevens on defense is because Angel is the obvious counter to this character. She has a turn 1 exhaust, which is 500, and obviously Dr. Stevens' active skill gives him 100% AP. For every 10% AP you gain when you are under the effect of exhaust, you would take that amount of exhaust damage, so he would take 5,000 damage. Now you could take exhaust resist to try and stop Dr. Stevens from taking that damage, but if you were planning to do that, the best option to do would actually be main resist, because a character will always do their active skill or rush or anything that increases AP, even if they are under the effect of exhaust. They won't even realize they're under effective exhaust. Main resist actually resists the actual damage output of exhaust, because exhaust does main damage onto a character, and also main resist will resist other forms of damage as well from other characters, whereas exhaust resist will only resist exhaust itself. So if you do plan on making a defense team Dr. Stevens with exhaust resist, I would switch it up for main resist. I will say building a defense team Dr. Stevens is pretty hard at the moment because there's so many different things you've got to think of. Dr. Stevens on attack, for instance, can impair and taunt him turn 1, so you need both of those resist. You can obviously come up against angels who will exhaust him, so he'll need main resist. He'll need also 5,000 HP. He doesn't really have the base stats. He doesn't really have the mod slots. He doesn't really have enough to really work on a defense team. So realistically, I don't think Dr. Stevens is going to work very well long term on a defense team. If anything, against characters like Angel, he could be self-destructive and hurt the rest of his team as well. So I think long term, you probably want to think more about Dr. Stevens being used on an attack team rather than the defense team, and that's how we're going to be modding him today. So the first mod we're going to use is going to be a HP mod on the defense set. If you were going to go for the HP set, I would use his defense mod. Try and make his stats as balanced as possible. You want to raise everything as much as possible on an attack team. Now, the top right hand corner, this really depends on what kind of Dr. Stevens you are trying to create. If you are using an anti-Mercer Dr. Stevens where it's got stun resist, obviously you probably want to go with defense versus blues here, or defense versus greens, because that's going to be generally what you're going to have on Mercer teams. However, you will have off trait from time to time, but it is generally expected that you're going to have tough characters. If you're building a Dr. Stevens to go up against a Jackie team, obviously Jackie's going to be fast and alert, so you want to go with defense versus fast or defense versus alert. Right now it seems to be quite a heavy fast team, but in the future there could be more alert characters that can work with Jackie, so I would go with defense versus fast if it was geared towards Jackie teams. But for the moment we're going to be creating this Dr. Stevens as an anti-Mercer Doc Stevens, where he's going to be defense versus tough. This of course means we definitely need a stun resist, the best stun resist pretty much we can get our hands on. Now in the auxiliary slot, which is the bottom left hand corner, you've got to really decide what you want on Dr. Stevens. You're coming up against defense teams a lot of the time, so something like Graze may not be as useful, because Graze does reduce the amount of incoming damage that Dr. Stevens will receive, but because he's coming up against defense teams, they're not necessarily going to do huge amounts of damage anyway. At this point, it's up to you what you want to go with. I would recommend either Graze to reduce that incoming damage, but after doing his active and his rush, there isn't much else that Dr. Stevens really needs to do. He doesn't really need to survive. He's not really necessarily going to be rushing again unless you get massively slowed down. So what I personally like to do is put AP drain on him, so that after that first active rush, and then the next turn he can't obviously go because he's been commanded, he can actually do things. He could potentially AP drain people. He's not doing much else. There's no other effects on his weapon that are offensive, nothing else that he can really do. So you could just get lucky with an AP drain here or there. Now in this last slot, it really is up to you. You could double down on the stats and give him some defense here, or you could try and double up on the resists and potentially take Dr. Stevens not just in against Mercer teams, but also in against potentially, let's say, Jackie teams or Angel teams. Before Jackie got released, this is the build I used to have, and I used to take him in against Mercer and Angel teams alike. A lot of Angel teams will have tough characters on them anyway. I see a lot of Prias on defense teams, obviously. So that defense versus tough is still very important against Angel. She obviously is a bit more of a rainbow leader, but the danger trait that Dr. Stevens has is strong, and there just aren't that many good strong defense team characters at the moment. So you don't necessarily have to increase his defense versus strong characters. So this is the kind of build I would have on a singular Dr. Stevens, and you can take this guy in against Mercer and Angel without too much of a problem. Obviously there's going to be some RNG involved when it comes to resisting those leader skills, but you're giving yourself a better chance by taking this guy in with the resist than without them, obviously. However, if you did have multiple Dr. Stevens and you did want to gear one towards Jackie teams, I would say this would be a good way to mod Dr. Stevens when you come up against her as a leader. You obviously got the confuse resist, you're doubling down on the stats just to increase his stats, and you're doing the defense against fast just because of the majority of the Jackie teams you're going to come up against are going to have fast characters. The Hengyens, the Arabs, this sort of thing. But for these tests, we're going to lock in these mods right here, and it is going to be an anti-Mercer / Angel Dr. Stevens. I know a lot of people will only have one doc, so you're going to probably have to gear him against multiple leaders like this. In my second region, I also have Dr. Stevens, and I've modded him pretty much identically, except I've used HP set and a defense mod, but it's pretty much the same sort of outcome. As you can see, his base stats have been increased a little bit, but nowhere near enough to what they would have to be able to survive Angel's active skill if he was on a defense team. And this is why I said he is very, very hard to gear towards survivability on a defense team right now. Even though I have used him on defense teams myself, I am most likely going to be changing him up very soon as an S-class character sitting in that position instead, being commanded would actually be just as useful, if not more useful, for the long term. Now, when it comes to Dr. Stevens' weapon, this is his base weapon. It has 30% HP, 15% defense, and obviously the third slot, you will know, is very strong. When being attacked, a better chance for up to 2 other teammates to gain 40% AP. On his rush, he obviously taunts 3, so this could happen 3 times, and that's a lot of AP being dished out. So you definitely should not change that third slot. Keep that there. Very strong. Now, a lot of people will debate what to do with the first 2 slots. Should I go with AP on attack? Should I go with AP on defense because he taunts first turn? Realistically, I'd say the best thing you can do is make this guy more of like a command character where they're just pure stats just to survive as long as possible. If you did want to have AP on attack or AP on the defense, I would open up the 4th slot by making this a 5-star weapon and then putting that in there. This is what I personally did with my Dr. Stevens weapon. I made the 30% HP go to 40%, and I obviously just added 30% defense. His stats get boosted quite nicely because of this. As you can see, his stats right now are only with the mods, but if we put him in a team, we can see the boost that he gets from his weapon. Now he goes to 3.3k HP and 3.6k defense. This is without leader skills, although if you are going to mainly be using him on an attack team, you will never see boosts in his defensive stats most likely. So the obvious setup for Dr. Stevens is himself and the command, just so you do get to rush him turn 1. The other 3 characters in your team obviously depend on what teams you're trying to face, whether you want to obviously face Jackie, Mercer, Angel, whatever defense teams you're facing. For now, I'm just going to take in some basic characters here just to show you how he works. So once the raid starts, it's pretty obvious. You just do his active, you command him, and he can rush. Now, you can select any character you want to control that one character. You can do taunt and impair to that one character, and it will randomize the other 2 characters that it does it to. Now, you'll notice once I do Dr. Stevens' rush, the 60% AP that he gives is randomly distributed between the entire team because I did not attack with anyone else first. Well, what we'll do is we'll control Priya here, and he'll do his rush, and the 60% AP that he gives went to Priya and to Sadiq. Now that is not ideal, obviously. You don't really want your AP going to Sadiq. You'd prefer it to go to, let's say, Princess, because her rush is much better. To do this, you attack with them first before doing Dr. Stevens' rush. So we're in the same scenario where Dr. Stevens can rush, but to make sure that the characters that we want to get the AP, we attack with them first, because AP bonuses go to people with the highest AP count already, and right now Princess and Priya both have 40 apiece. When we do Dr. Stevens' rush, they both get their rush for the next turn, so they'll get turn 2 rushes naturally. This means that once they do their rushes on the second turn, they will actually be able to do a basic attack on the third turn. Whereas normally if they were commanded the second turn, which you could do as well, they would not be able to do their basic attacks on the third turn. Now I'm going to show you how you can get a first turn rush on some characters. It's pretty straightforward. You will need 2 commands. You will need one for Dr. Stevens and one for the character that you actually want to get a first turn rush. It doesn't matter what level of command you take in, because it's on the first turn. I'm taking a 5-star for instance, it makes no difference. So you just start the raid just as you did before. You do Dr. Stevens active, nice and simple. You also do the basic attack on the character that you want to get the first turn rush. Then you command that character before doing Dr. Stevens' rush. You do Dr. Stevens' rush, and you can see that my character now has a first turn rush, and I can just do that, and I can win the raid in the first turn if I so wish. This is obviously with a rampage weapon, so it is very good to get first turn rushes off of characters who are very, very powerful, and characters like Arav or Priya with a rampage weapon are the obvious choices. Now when it comes to real raid situations, even if your Dr. Stevens does resist, you're going to run into the situation where your command doesn't. My command is stunned here, obviously coming up against a Mercer lead, and there's not much I can do. However, I can just do the basic actives to start things off, and this is how we would normally gear our Dr. Stevens anyway. And then when we rush the second turn, those characters will still get their rushes naturally. If I did come up against a neutralized character, they could obviously neutralize Dr. Stevens on that turn. Or if I did come up against, let's say, a Raulito would probably focus Dr. Stevens to try and get the impair on attack off on him. You're still getting the second turn rushes naturally, so you can still bombard your enemy basically with the rush attacks that you're going to be bringing out. Hopefully get some damage in, and if not, you're going to just be able to clean up the remainers with your controllers. For instance, my princess is my controlling character and she's going to control the last 2 characters. And then it's pretty much just see it out from here. And as you can see, it's turn 3 now, Heng Yen and Priya. Even though they rush turn 2, they are still able to rush. It's nice and easy that way. And you can finish the raid nice and quick. So this was just some basics on Dr. Stevens in terms of his mods and how to start using him in the raid system. I will just say that when it comes to his rush, you want to be very selective of who you use that rush on, because when you come up against certain teams, they're going to already have quite a large amounts of AP gained, and they're going to have commands. Sometimes it can be good to just use it on the command character to stop them from being able to actually command anybody. Make sure you check people's resists, because if the command can resist taunt, even if they're impaired, obviously they can still command people. If you are running Dr. Stevens with Arav, which I do on one of my regions, you would want to try and control Angel if you can, because you want to stop her from doing her first turn active. But once you start getting rolling with it, you'll kind of see the danger characters that Dr. Stevens faces based on the lineup you're bringing. For instance, Angel is dangerous, but if you do resist her daze and get Dr. Stevens rush off turn 1, you don't really have to worry too much about her active skill past that. It can sometimes happen when his weapon procs, but it's not really that big a deal at that point, especially considering the taunted attacks that he will have with his rush will happen before Angel does her active. So on that second turn, it shouldn't be as much of an issue. So hopefully this helps you with using Dr. Stevens going forwards. If you do want to see more use of Dr. Stevens, you can check out my previous war streams where I use him quite heavily in the last couple of months since I got him. He does speed up your attacks drastically, but it can take a little bit of getting used to initially. He is definitely one of the most powerful 6 stars still in the game, and I don't really see an end to his usage in the S-Class era on attack teams unless things drastically change going forwards. That is the end of my video though, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in, and as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.